Welcome to Bible Quiz Tube. Ready to challenge your Bible knowledge? We've got 20 tough questions from the Old and New Testaments. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your score in the comments. Let's dive into the quiz.
Question 1. Who was the first person recorded in the Bible to give a tithe? A. Moses. B. Jacob. C. Abraham. D. David. The correct answer is C. Abraham. The explanation. Abraham was the first person recorded in the Bible to give a tithe. After rescuing Lot and defeating enemy kings, Abraham gave a tenth of all the spoils. This act of giving reflects Abraham's gratitude and recognition of God's blessings. Genesis chapter 14 verse 20 states, "Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything." Question 2. To whom did Abraham give a tenth of everything after a battle? A. The king of Sodom. B. Melchizedek. C. Isaac. D. Himself. The correct answer is B. Melchizedek. The explanation. Abraham gave a tenth of everything to Melchizedek, who was the king of Salem and a priest of God Most High. This event highlights the sacredness of giving and the recognition of divine authority. In Genesis chapter 14 verses 18 to 20 we read, "Then Melchizedek king of Salem brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram." Question 3. What was the purpose of the tithe in the Old Testament? A. To build the tabernacle. B. To support the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows. C. To purchase sacrificial animals. D. To pay taxes to the king. The correct answer is B. To support the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows. The explanation. The tithe in the Old Testament was a commandment to dedicate 1/10 of all produce to provide for the Levites, who had no inheritance of land, as well as for foreigners, orphans, and widows. This system ensured fairness and care for the vulnerable in Israelite society, as it says in Deuteronomy chapter 14 verses 28 to 29, "At the end of every 3 years, bring all the tithes of that year's produce and store it in your towns, so that the Levites who have no allotment or inheritance of their own, and the foreigners, the fatherless, and the widows who live in your towns may come and eat and be satisfied." Question 4. Who gave Elijah a small cake of bread and received her miracle of flour and oil? A. The widow of Zarephath. B. The Shunammite woman. C. Ruth. D. Esther. The correct answer is A. The widow of Zarephath. The explanation. The widow of Zarephath demonstrated faith and generosity by using her last bit of flour and oil to bake bread for Elijah. As a result, her supplies miraculously did not run out during the famine. This event is recounted in 1 Kings chapter 17 verses 13 to 16, where Elijah assures her, "The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." Question 5. What type of offerings were the Israelites instructed to bring for the building of the tabernacle? A. Mandatory tithes. B. Peace offerings. C. Free will offerings. D. Burnt offerings. The correct answer is C. Free will offerings. The explanation. When constructing the tabernacle, God commanded the Israelites to bring free will offerings, allowing them to give from the heart as a demonstration of their dedication and generosity. Exodus chapter 35 verses 21 to 29 details how the people willingly offered gold, silver, and fine materials, Everyone who was willing and whose heart moved them came and brought an offering to the Lord for the work. Question 6. What kind of animals were acceptable for sacrifices in the Old Testament? A. Any animal. B. Only firstborn animals. C. Animals with blemishes. D. Animals without defect. The correct answer is D. Animals without defect. The explanation. In the Old Testament, God required that animals offered as sacrifices be without defect, symbolizing purity and perfection. This principle is outlined in Leviticus chapter 1 verse 3. If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, you are to offer a male without defect. You must present it at the entrance to the tent of meeting, so that it will be acceptable to the Lord. Question 7. According to Proverbs chapter 19, giving to the poor represent what? A. An act of charity. B. Lending to the Lord. C. A fulfillment of the law. D. An optional virtue. The correct answer is B. Lending to the Lord. The explanation. Proverbs chapter 19 verse 17 teaches the value of generosity toward the poor, equating it to lending to God Himself. The verse states, "Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and He will reward them for what they have done." Question 8. What did David say about offering sacrifices to the Lord in 2 Samuel? A. Sacrifices should cost him something. B. Offerings must be given regularly. C. Sacrifices are symbolic. D. Sacrifices are not necessary. The correct answer is A. Sacrifices should cost him something. The explanation. David emphasized the importance of giving sacrificially to God, refusing to offer anything that cost him nothing. In 2 Samuel chapter 24 verse 24, he declared, "I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing." This reflects the principle that true worship involves personal sacrifice. Question 9. What principle about giving does Jesus teach in Matthew chapter 6 verses 1 to 4? A. Giving should be done openly for recognition. B. Giving should be done in secret. C. Giving is not necessary. D. Only the wealthy should give. The correct answer is B. Giving should be done in secret. The explanation. In Matthew chapter 6 verses 1 to 4, Jesus teaches that giving should be done humbly and without seeking public recognition. He says, "But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." Question 10. What example of generosity did Zacchaeus set in the New Testament? A. He gave half his possessions to the poor. B. He donated all his wealth to charity. C. He built a synagogue for his community. D. He gave offerings in the temple. The correct answer is A. He gave half his possessions to the poor. The explanation. Zacchaeus, a tax collector, demonstrated a radical change of heart after meeting Jesus. He declared, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Luke chapter 19 verse 8. This act showed his repentance and commitment to generosity. Question 11. What principle does Proverbs chapter 11 teach about generosity? A. Generosity depletes resources. B. Generosity is optional. C. Only the rich should be generous. D. A generous person will prosper. The correct answer is D. A generous person will prosper. The explanation. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 25 highlights the rewards of generosity. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. This verse emphasizes the blessings that come from a generous heart and the reciprocal nature of giving. Question 12. What promise does Jesus make about giving in Luke chapter 6 verse 38? A. Giving will lead to poverty. B. When we give, it will be given back to us in good measure. C. Giving is only for the righteous. D. We should give sparingly. The correct answer is B. When we give, it will be given back to us in good measure. The explanation. In Luke chapter 6 verse 38, Jesus promises that generosity will be met with abundance. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure pressed down, shaken together and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Question 13. What principle about giving does Jesus teach in Matthew chapter 10 verse 8? A. Give sparingly. B. Giving is not necessary. C. Only give to those who can repay. D. Freely you have received, freely give. The correct answer is D. Freely you have received, freely give. The explanation. In Matthew chapter 10 verse 8, Jesus teaches his disciples the principle of generosity, urging them to give freely as they have received God's blessings freely. He says, "Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons." Freely you have received, freely give. This reflects the selfless nature of giving in service to others.
Enjoying the Bible quiz? Subscribe now for more challenging and fun Bible questions.
Question 14. What were Israelites commanded not to do when harvesting their fields? A. Harvest all the crops. B. Burn the leftover crops. C. Reap to the edges or gather the gleanings. D. Keep extra crops in the storehouse. The correct answer is C. Reap to the edges or gather the gleanings. The explanation. Leviticus chapter 19 verses 9 to 10 instructed the Israelites not to reap to the edges of their fields or gather the gleanings. These were to be left for the poor and the foreigners. The passage says, "When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the foreigner residing among you." Question 15. What was the early church's attitude toward possessions and giving? A. They hoarded wealth. B. They avoided giving. C. They tithed strictly. D. They shared everything and gave to those in need. The correct answer is D. They shared everything and gave to those in need. The explanation. The early church displayed remarkable generosity and unity, sharing all their possessions and providing for anyone in need. Acts chapter 4 verse 32 states, "All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had." This demonstrated the selflessness and community spirit among the first Christians. Question 16. How were offerings used to support the Levites? A. As payment for their labor. B. As their inheritance since they had no land. C. As temple maintenance funds. D. For food distribution. The correct answer is B. as their inheritance since they had no land. The explanation. The Levites, being set apart for temple service, did not receive an inheritance of land like the other tribes of Israel. Instead, offerings were designated for their support. Numbers chapter 18 verse 24 says, "Instead, I give to the Levites as their inheritance the tithes that the Israelites present as an offering to the Lord." Question 17. How were Israelites to treat the firstborn of their livestock? A. Consecrate them to the Lord. B. Sell them at market. C. Keep them for personal use. D. Offer them only if blemished. The correct answer is A. Consecrate them to the Lord. The explanation. The firstborn of livestock were to be consecrated to the Lord as an acknowledgement of His provision and sovereignty. Exodus chapter 13 verse 12 states, "You are to give over to the Lord the first offspring of every womb." All the firstborn males of your livestock belong to the Lord. Question 18. What principle about generosity does Proverbs chapter 11 verse 25 teach? A. Generosity leads to wealth. B. A generous person will prosper and be refreshed. C. Only the poor should be generous. D. Generosity is not rewarded. The correct answer is B. A generous person will prosper and be refreshed. The explanation. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 25 underscores the blessings of generosity. A generous person will prosper, whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. This principle demonstrates that generosity not only benefits others, but also brings fulfillment and blessings to the giver. Question 19. What was offered to God during the dedication of Solomon's temple? A. Gold and silver. B. Sacrifices of sheep and cattle. C. Food and grain offerings. D. Tithes from the tribes. The correct answer is B. Sacrifices of sheep and cattle. The explanation. During the dedication of Solomon's temple, an immense number of sacrifices were offered to God, symbolizing worship and thanksgiving. 1 Kings chapter 8 verses 62 to 63 records, "Then the king and all Israel with him offered sacrifices before the Lord. So many sheep and cattle that they could not be recorded or counted. This reflected the nation's gratitude and reverence." Question 20. What did Jacob vow to give to God in Genesis chapter 28? A. A burnt offering. B. A tenth of all he received. C. His firstborn son. D. A portion of his livestock. The correct answer is B. A tenth of all he received. The explanation. After his vision of the ladder reaching heaven, Jacob vowed to give God a tenth of all he received as an act of gratitude and devotion. Genesis chapter 28 verse 22 records Jacob's words, "And of all that you give me I will give you a tenth."
Don't forget to subscribe and like to support our channel. Share your score in the comments and join our community and support our mission.